Let's do it. Manny, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So before we get into your good work, I want to know first and foremost, one of the things that changed so much for all of us 5 years ago was this pandemic. How did you get through the pandemic of 2020, and how has it gone into what you're doing today in 2025?
Interesting question. Overall, customers um, they started seeing the value of using Zoom and remote meetings. Where I grew up in the old-fashioned way of business development, where you make your phone call and then you set up your personal meeting and go out and meet the prospect, and hopefully you can take it from there. Well, it was until we were all forced to. Many clients didn't really see the value of remote meetings, and then also the technology that we had wasn't working as simple as Zoom was. I mean, Zoom made it simple, and then all of a sudden, the customers were like, you know what? I can get ready real quick for this meeting. I can take whatever, 30 minutes or an hour and get my questions answered and be done. There's no traffic jam because I live in the Mid-Atlantic, which is a lot of traffic. And it just became, socially accepted and more efficient.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Let's get to the heart and soul of what you do. There's a lot going on with your work, but
Mhm.
let's pare it down to this. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds. It's career day, and the kid in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer him?
Sure. Sure. So I work as an outsourced chief financial officer, which means I work part-time for a bunch of different companies, and I help them to maximize their profits and cash flow to achieve financial freedom.
So what did you want to be when you were 12 years old? What was your dream job?
Back then, I wanted to be an engineer, aerospace.
Okay.
Back then it was the space shuttle was a big deal.
So how did you acquire this financial prowess? Take me back to the beginnings of your life where you were born and raised. What were the foundational elements that eventually led to you, being a business leader, being kind of a guru of finance? How did that happen?
That's a great question. My parents were born in Greece. Back here, this lovely picture,
Yeah.
on an island in the middle of nowhere. They didn't know each other. They actually met when they immigrated here to America after World War II. And we grew up in the restaurant business. So at a very early age, okay, we were being taught how to cost something out, how you purchase stuff from suppliers, right? How you take care of customers. We were taught that very early. So I was taught at like 10 years old.
Yeah.
My the younger generation now, their kids are getting taught at 3 years old, which is the most amazing thing. So we learned math and how to run a business at an early age. I liked the fast money. You could go home with cash in your pocket every night. So that kept me motivated. And my parents said, "Hey, we don't have $1 million to leave you, so you better make sure you at least get a degree." Because their education was interrupted. They couldn't finish their education because of the breakout of World War II. So, I worked and went to school. And then when I got out of school and decided to make a career change, I decided to go into banking. I learned that all these big companies, wealthy business families, they were doing the same thing that my parents and my teachers and mentors were doing, which was keep it all very simple. And I was amazed by that. I always thought, oh, I can't wait to get out of here. We'll go and have systems and complexity. Boy, was I wrong, Joe.
So let me ask you this. Who's been kind of a hero? Who's been an inspiration for you in your life to find your voice and your foothold in business?
My parents primarily, they had a really rough life. Um, my father went from the Great Depression. He was born during the Great Depression, and then right after that, here comes World War II. So he had a rough like first 20 years of his life,
Yeah.
but he managed to immigrate to America and he made it work. And my mom had a similar story. So they were kind of like the two heroes that you really didn't appreciate until you got older. Because they didn't say, we had to walk 30 miles, in the frozen tundra to school. They weren't like that. They didn't talk about it.
Wow. So let me ask you
Mhm.
this. If you can meet one business mind out there, a financial mind, somebody that you would like to spend a little time with, maybe it would help you on your journey, who would you love to meet and talk to?
I'd like to talk to Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
I've always admired, the way he got started in the 50s and then the way that he progressed, made his changes. That would definitely be something that I'd be up for.
There's a lot of uncertainty right now, financially speaking. There's a lot of things that are going on between tariffs and
Mhm.
prices aren't coming down. I just saw that beef is soaring. Where are you with the way our financial world is going to transpire, say, in the next 6 months to a year? Are you worried? Are you optimistic? Where are you at with that?
I'm always optimistic because I play it conservative when it comes to the financial stuff. That's what I got taught. It's not
Yeah.
popular, but we were taught not to depend on borrowed funds, which is very fascinating because I spent 10 years learning in a bank. I started at the bottom. But if you're very careful, a business owner doesn't really have anywhere that they can lean to. All the responsibilities fall on them. And as long as you're keeping track of your margins and your profitability and not relying on borrowed funds, like borrow it for a reason, borrow it to buy a machine, right? That you're going to make more money. Borrow it for a space that you're going to put more people in. Be prudent when it comes to that. So I'm always optimistic because opportunities always present themselves.
So speaking of finances, what was one of the first big fun purchases you made? You were nervous going in, but you loved it. It was a great purchase.
Uh, Probably my first house,
Yeah.
right? Because I moved around for my career, so I was in an apartment for
Yeah.
a long time, in Texas and in California, and then I bought a house, and I really didn't. You don't really understand until you do it, right? You got to
Yeah.
dive in there, and you know, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I did the math. The math did not scare me. The math said that it's cheaper to buy this house and make this payment versus paying this far bigger payment in rent. That's how it was when I did it.
Yeah.
And some things have not changed, right?
Yeah. It's gotten to that point now. Yeah.
So,
So
mhm.
let me ask you this. What gets you up every day? What is it that gets you up to do the work that you do? And do you try to find a balance between your soul and doing the work that you do? What's your philosophy on that?
I mean, I've always been self-motivated, Joe. Um, I can't tell you why, but I've always had drive, and this work excites me. I'm very passionate about it. To the point that I took everything that I learned over the last 30 years from my teachers and mentors, and I was blessed to write a book about it. So I'm self-motivated. I get really jazzed about being able to see my small contribution. I'm a small part of big teams, and I can see my small contribution every month, helping that business owner avoid potholes and watching them get to their goals. I mean, it is exciting, you
So
know.
if you were to have a dream tonight, you went back to an 18-year-old version of you, ready to charge out into the world, and you can give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, relax, take it easy.
Yeah.
Rome wasn't built in a day. It's really hard when you know, you go through the three stages of life, in my opinion, right? You want stuff and you don't have any money, stage one. Stage two begins the accumulation phase where you finally have a job or a business and you get steady money and you start buying stuff. And then now I'm in phase three, the divestiture stage, Joe. I'm trying to get rid of stuff. Don't want it. Don't
Yeah.
need it. Right. So just relax. These things take time. And then don't beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself up about stuff. It's not going to go your way all the time.
So talk to me about your latest book.
So yeah, I was blessed. It's called Ultimate Profit Management, maximizing profitability as you grow your business. And it's a fun book. It's not a textbook. And I got a lot of cool stories in there. And basically, it was I kept seeing the same movie over and over again. The business owners that were successful, were like the tortoise. They were going slow and prudent. And the ones that weren't successful were trying to do everything fast and they didn't mind taking on debt and stuff like that. So these are all the lessons that I learned. Go slow, be prudent, make sure you're making money. Don't rely too much, don't have an over reliance on borrowed funds. And just all the stuff that I learned, I was able to put in this book, which is really cool.
So, of everything that you've accomplished at this point in your life and evolved to, what are you the proudest of?
I've survived, perseverance. I've been a solopreneur for the last 22 years. And I have certainly I had different expectations when I was 18, in my teens and my 20s and 30s. But I managed over time to get comfortable with it. And you can make an impact and have a really nice life as long as you just take it, one day at a time and don't put too much crazy pressure on yourself.
Yeah,
This stuff doesn't buy you happiness, in my opinion. Happiness, you got to find it yourself. I can coach you and help you financially, right? I can do that in a split second. I cannot help you find happiness. You got to find that on your own.
yeah. So let's say you walk into a room of everybody that knows you in a business sense, and you could go up to that podium and tell them one fun story. Maybe a time you jumped out of an airplane, the coolest place you visited on the planet, the first concert that you ever saw, just a fun story that would humanize you in a little different light to them. What would be a fun story, an interesting story you could tell that room of people?
I don't know. I got to think of one because there's a lot of them.
Okay.
I did jump out of a plane for my 30th birthday, the one and only time,
Yeah.
did it with two friends.
Yeah.
Um, fun story is going back to this island where my parents are from. It is the most beautiful place on the earth. And there's a lot of men and women that are like me that are first generation born here in the States.
Yeah.
And as beautiful as that place is in Greece, it's very poor, you know, and you've got to make a decision, like, are you going to just stay and do the best you can? Do you have the mental wherewithal to just stay here, know that you're not going to make a lot of money, but you're going to live in paradise? Or are you going to try to, get sponsored to be able to go to the United States and look at a life of concrete and asphalt and probably work in a hot kitchen? You know, which one are you prepared to do?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I didn't have to make that choice,
Sure.
but I get to go back and see how difficult it was for those people, my forefathers and foremothers, and how hard they had to work. I feel like I've had an easy life here relative to what they had to go through.
Absolutely. So, Manny, at the
Mhm.
end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that you work with, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm a good person, not a nice person. I used to be a nice person. Now just a good person. Okay. And, you know, I want to do the right thing every day. And I'm a hustler. I'm not going to procrastinate. I'm going to get on top of stuff and get it done. You know?
So, if anyone has any questions, they want to hire you, they want to get a copy of the Ultimate Profit Management, any of the good business in your world, where's the best place to go?
Sure. So you can find the book on Amazon, and you can get a hold of me at my website at Portal CFO, PORTALCFO.com.
Excellent. Manny, I'm so glad we hooked up. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. What a wonderful backdrop to talk to you about your life and your world. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Joe. Had a good time.
Thank you.
Looking to get new clients to your business through cold calling or email marketing? At Agency Y, they envision a world in which small and big companies have equal chances to win new customers in the market. Their purpose is to bring parity and reduce the gap between large and small firms with the help of their cold calling and cold email marketing services. Use the code Joe Dimino 10 at www.agencyyy.org/coldcallingjoe.php or www.agencyyy.org/emailmarketingjoe.php to get 10% off your first order. This is Joe Dimino of Neon Jazz and Famous Interviews, and I stand behind Agency Y to meet your business dreams.